Good day, my people. This is the Watchman on the 10th of March 2022. Yes, I took a little break. Did you all miss me? I'm sure some people calling no. Anyway, today I want to talk about surveillance. And yes, I am speaking about this because in Trinidad right now there appears to be some controversy, some dispute that alleges that the government of Trinidad and Tobago has purchased certain kinds of spying, electronic, or monitoring equipment, allegedly from Israel, and allegedly, some people say, called Pegasus, that can be used to track individuals through their visually and through all their electronic communication methods, including the internet and your telephone and everything else. And some people are crying foul and they're screaming at the top of their lungs that what the government is doing is ultra virus the Constitution and ultra virus their rights as citizens or residents of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me say this. If it came from Israel, I'm not surprised, if that is true. When I worked in Israel, I knew, nobody had to tell me, that constant surveillance was being undertaken because Israel believes that it is under constant threat from a myriad of enemies, a lot of whom are based within its own shores. So when I was there, I used to tell my friends whenever I'm using the phone, hey, remember there's 3 of us on this line, me, you, and whoever is listening. Because believe me, I was sure as a foreigner in that country that somebody was listening to everything I said or did at all times, especially being a black man. That's just the reality that we black people face. But I will say this, even though that many countries and many governments are not as paranoid as Israel, I believe truly that every government must be paranoid enough to acquire certain equipment that would allow it to surveil, monitor, or to use the loaded word spy on its citizens in certain circumstances. And I say in certain circumstances, I mean where those persons are or might be engaged in serious criminal acts or serious acts against the security and safety of the country, including treason and sedition. That is my belief. Now, these things are crimes. And if you have equipment that allows you to monitor persons that way, then that requires that you have legal permission. In other words, you should have a warrant of some sort. Because if you don't, then you will be going against the law if you invade people's private space, their homes and their vehicles, for example, and you put surveillance equipment in there to monitor them without there being certain levels of approval. Even though we don't see our private vehicles in the same way as we see our homes, I believe that your vehicles also qualify as a place of your all-time privacy or area of private space. But that is with respect to illegal surveillance. But there are other kinds of surveillance that police officers, especially, and security officials have and ought to engage in order to ensure that they know what is happening. Now, in order for you to get a warrant, you need to go have sufficient information that will satisfy a member of the judicial authority that it is necessary for you to get a warrant. But in many cases, you will not start with that. You will start with information that you may need to verify in some form. And that is where you can engage in surveillance that is more passive, or even active surveillance, like following people in public places, seeing where they go and who they interact with and what they do. Now, you can't do it for the entire country. So anybody who faces that must have been targeted for some good reason. And I say good reason because generally that's how it is. I don't know if there are police officers. There might be police officers who are engaged in surveilling people to get information, not about crimes, but about personal failings. Like if someone is cheating on their wife or their husband, or is engaged in some sort of sexual activity that others would frown upon, or they might feel embarrassed about, or if they're doing certain things that will make them look weak or different and can affect them politically or socially. And then it is possible that police officers can use that information to unlawfully, well, there's no lawful part of it, but to extort money and other valuables and concessions from the persons who they have surveilled. That is a danger, but it's always a danger with any action and activity that the police engage in, or the soldiers. We've had many allegations of police officers going on unlawful warrants and then putting money from the proceeds of the crime into their own pockets rather than it going back to the station as part of the exhibits. So that's a risk that always will happen. We have to have more stringent checking of police officers through integrity testing, through investigations, through even surveillance, in order to determine that those we might believe are engaged in such activities, whether or not they are, and to take appropriate action. So why are we acting in the country? Why are the politicians acting as if surveillance is not taking place? All governments do it. We talk about surveillance, but we're not counting the drones and the cameras we use on the streets and aeroplanes and checking people's social media content. All of these things are done and should be done and must be done in order to protect the society. And I would be surprised to hear any government, any opposition, any prime minister or opposition leader would be challenging that as somehow being wrong. Come on now. As I said, more invasive types of surveillance would require a warrant. And there are instances, even when you're engaging in active surveillance or following people on the streets, you have to be careful how you do it so that it does not become a point of harassment. Okay? Or you don't cross the line from what is legally allowed to what requires you to have a warrant. But if we don't have information, we cannot even proceed to get warrants. And sometimes that's all you have, and you need to check it out first and to get more evidence that is necessary for you to use legally. So I can't understand the big discussion. I heard a television or radio program on which Gary Griffith was, and he was talking about the age of the JPs and how you could go to a JP and get anything signed because the JPs are 90 years of age or more. I don't think he understood the the intricate nature of the discussion. He was just trying to find a way to bash the police or bash people to make himself look good. Because the gentleman who was talking on the program with him was talking more like if he believed that any surveillance, no matter what type, would require you to have a warrant because you're invading people's privacy. Come on. People's privacy are being invaded every single day. Your telephone, the internet, your bank information, your bank card, everything that you use in modern society involves a form of monitoring, surveillance, or to use the loaded word, spying. You're being spied upon every single day. Even this mobile phone I'm using to send you this message. Therefore, let's not be naive here. The real reason why politicians are afraid is because they don't want people to catch them with their boyfriends and girlfriends who are not known or not suspected by their significant others, you know? That is really what it's about. Or whether they go and they drink endless babash somewhere and they want people to know that they're drinking illegal alcohol. All these kinds of things that people do that we as human beings do that we don't want people to do. There are many things that we do and we don't want everybody to know it. You understand? Some people might like wearing women's underwear. Men I'm talking about, and they don't want nobody to know that. But that's not a sufficient or good enough reason to come against surveillance. Let us clear the air and let the government, this government and the previous government, say that they have never used surveillance equipment. I know that is not true. And it can be used badly as well. There is an allegation that it was used to spy on the DPP's office and not under this government. So who's talking now? So maybe people are afraid because now the shoe is on the other foot. But we as a society must be aware that we must protect ourselves from certain harmful things. If we had had proper surveillance, including following and electronic and other surveillance on Abu Bakr and his not-so-merry men, then what would have happened with the coup in 1990 might have been avoided. Or we might have even been able to get evidence against politicians who it is alleged were involved in the planning and in the carrying out of the coup. And that's where the Israelis don't waste time. They want to know who every enemy is. But they consider themselves to be constantly at war. We are not. So we can pull back from that and only go where it is necessary to have evidence of criminal activity. And then, more importantly, we have to decide who holds this equipment. Whether this equipment should be held by the police only or by national security generally, or only by chosen, approved, and certified persons and groups that we can trust to carry out the operation objectively and without using it either to hurt others unfairly or to fill their own pockets unlawfully. That's really what the issue is. And we need to have surveillance equipment now. When you go to England, you can't pee anywhere without a camera picking you up in public or semi-public. And it is happening now in England, in America, in other countries. Cameras are everywhere. So even if you go into your own home, your neighbor's camera will pick you up. Are we going to stop all of this? We can't. So why are we against governments for trying to do the same thing? It is a surveillance society that we live in. And let's be aware of that, please.